Hey guys, welcome to another session of Hall of Fame. I have an outstanding personality, Sarada Vempati, who I've had the privilege of meeting, mentoring, etc. For the Artificial Intelligence Machine Learning program back in the day, around 2018. Sarada's background is amazing. She's sort of started her career with Hyderabad Central University. I see that she has like a MSc in mathematics, so she's got that thorough foundation. And after that, she's been pretty much sort of immersed and seasoned with Infor. And she's currently a development manager. I hear that the company's been recently acquired. So without further ado, thank you so much for coming and accepting my request. I know you probably have a very busy schedule, etc. Would love to know from your own words your journey, what you have seen, and if you can share some of the ups and lows as well.
Thank you, Jay. And it's nice seeing you. That I should say first. It's like very good to meet old friends back.
Thank you.
So to start with, as you said, I have I did my post-graduation in mathematics. I was never a computer fanatic, to tell you the truth. I always hated computers. That's where my journey starts, actually. And then because of interest in working together with different teammates and so on, I moved to computer science, did some courses while I was teaching mathematics to students for degree and undergrad students. And then I joined BAN at that time, long back, 97, 98. I joined BAN, and then I moved, as BAN got acquired by different companies, just to keep that, either the software engineer software professional moves from one company to another, or the company changes. So for me, it's the company changed, the brands changed, and I'm now working with Infor, which is part of Coke Industries. Mainly our headquarters is in New York. And I've been very lucky professionally, I should say, that at different stages in my career, I always got an opportunity to move onto the bandwagon where it is the latest and the greatest. If I use the word keeping myself relevant, I use the word relevance, very important, because it's software is very dynamic. It keeps changing. When I joined long back, Java was the rage. And then things changed, web development and whole programming world changes. And now we talk about cloud computing and AI, right? And I was very lucky, I should say, that whenever there was something new happening, I could just get onto that bandwagon. That's how it had been. And so I'm here to share my experiences, let's say.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that sort of brief summary. So just want to rewind back to when you took the course. I think it was 2018, early 2018, Q1, Q2, or probably Q3, I forget. And just want to know your mindset from a senior leadership space. I'm sure there was a final trigger, but what was that 1-2 years leading up to that decision? Were you inspired by some senior leader talk about machine learning, or were you evaluating thematically 3-4 sectors, like maybe blockchain, AI, and I don't know, quantum computing? And then you said, okay, let me upskill in this particular area because you seem to have a tech background. Or was it just some other friend of yours took a course and then you were like, okay, this is great, let me just jump on the bandwagon? Talk us a little bit about the mindset, if you can ruminate back, take a time capsule back. What was going on in Sharada's mind back then?
Yeah, so as I said, in my company, when we were moving, during that period, just 2 years or 3 years before that period, we moved on to the bandwagon of being a cloud first company. Till then, it was everything in my control, like software is in my control. I can look through anything goes wrong, I can debug my code, I can analyze it. So a customer comes up and says something is not working, then I know I can analyze and say where it is going wrong and be able to tell the customer about it. Already I was actually by then the customer facing front, positioning the products to the customers and so on, implementing it, giving them implementation directions and so on. So when we moved to the cloud first strategy, it became very clear now that I'm going to be more blindfolded. people will just tell me indicators and I have to diagnose and say what the problem is going to be. And that made me a bit nervous because earlier I had all my tools in my hand and I was in control. Now I'm being made more blindfolded and have to listen to the things and then determine what it could be. And the customer is expecting me to perform as before, right? And that's when I was looking around, what is the next thing? How can I address this problem? That's what was my thinking around that time. And obviously AI, machine learning is the action for it. And I tried to, all through my career, I have been learning all by myself. Not really took any course other than my postgraduate course, actually. So I tried to do AI and machine learning all by myself. So you can imagine that you Google out, find a course, and then jump onto it. And then you will find that you are stuck or you think you understood. See, this is where the biggest problem comes. You think you understood something, it's your perspective. But whether that is the right thing or not, we do not know, because AI beats your logic. It's not logic in AI, it's something else. And that's where it gets, it was actually very confusing for me, and it was never consistent. The second major thing for me was I couldn't put my efforts consistently. During the weekdays, you're always busy with some deliverables, deadlines, and things like that. And weekends are, personal and homework, that which you need to do. So it was like, you can't do a machine learning or a AI new thing, which is going to has to change your perspective or thinking, right from what you have been groomed all your, let's say, 25 years of your learning and career and so on. So then I found that I really tried it for 1 year, trying to do all by myself, and then I gave up because I have never gone beyond doing a basic classification or even gradient descent, trying to understand what it is, and then it would start a week or 15 days later, again I'm where I left again. So I said, this is not going to work. And then at that time I attended one seminar organized by HICIA, and in that meeting there was a general discussion happening, and there was a talk, I don't remember by whom, but one of the eminent personalities spoke about AI. And that got me triggered that, okay, this is something which I need to hear from experienced people. It's not something which I can pursue by myself. So it is something, if I have to be authentic about it after whatever I do, and in my position and role, I have to be authentic. It has to be something which I should do a course. So that's what drove me into picking up a course and then, start doing on it. That's how it is.
No, perfect. Actually, many people don't even have that kind of a mindset of, let me try it out, let me fail, let me get up, let me fail again. And then they understand, okay, they come to that realization. I have done that actually. I mean, not many people know this, but probably I've told it in one of these Hall of Fames that, back in the day, this is 2011, 2012, I tried to pick up machine learning from the Andrew Ng course. And I still think it's in Octave. Octave is the programming language. And I struggled. Like I would take so many coffees trying to sit there. I think the way, what I did not understand it then, but I maybe rediscovered a more deeper insight in 2016 is, see, tech is evolving, right? Tech, somebody who knows English in 1940s has a significant advantage about who knows, only vernacular languages. Somebody who knows Java in, 90s, they became the billionaires like Vinod Khosla, etc. Today, if you know Java, you're not really having an edge. So obviously AI is the next big thing, and tomorrow it could be something else. 2030, definitely somebody somewhere smart is going to invent something. So the insight I got, and again, through a lot of mistakes, good mistakes, is that tech is going to evolve. You better table a budget, pay a premium, put some money, set aside 6 months for this, like you said, learning. And I know I'm not going to do it. I'm not incredibly gifted where I can, for something new, like a violin or like something else, I just can't sit and learn. It has to be like kickboxing, like karate. There should a gym. Like you have to pay the membership. There should be a master who whips you into shape. So that is something resonated with me very well. I didn't even try 1 year. Only 6 months I gave up. This is back, and at least. So in the future, I'm going to continue to upskill as well, paying some premium for the courses. Perfect. Thank you for that refreshing sort of candidness. So in terms of, I think we've covered a little bit about pre-course. Let's talk a little bit about course. So obviously, you're a senior leader. Seems like your circumstances, you also have a completely full-fledged family going on. And these are intense courses, right? You have to know you're going to get a benefit, but if you get yin, you have to get the yang. You have to pay the price. What are the kind of sacrifices, or family sacrifices as well? Everybody must have, or your staff sacrifices. They're seeing lesser of time of you, etc. What went on there? How did you manage? What was your strategy?
I think the first thing I should say is the family. Family and family support is utmost important. For me, I think I come from a traditional family, so it is more like my in-laws were, everyone, my elders were all like, you're already in a job. So my in-laws were in government jobs. So once you do a job, there is nothing like learning. Why do you need to learn? That was the first thing, first hurdle for me. While my husband was very supportive, my in-laws were like, is it necessary already? You go out of home from Monday to Friday. You want to be again out. And that's being a woman. That's another add-on tag that which you get. Yeah. So that was my first thing. So it was almost like mentoring and translating. So the initial days, it was for initial few weeks, it was my husband who supported me, who just said, let her go, kind of a thing. And then I used to do the counseling kind of a thing, which was more about whatever I learned during the weekend, during the coffee talks in the morning, that you just try to translate into a language which they can understand, which is also very important for me to see if I understood and assimilated what I learned correctly or not, right? So that was something which I used to do. And I think after 4 weeks, they were in game with me and they were full supporting me for that. Children, everyone. It was otherwise a bit tough, but that helped. Coming to within doing the course, yes, I would say if you're getting into a course like this, whatever age, you have to be prepared to learn and unlearn. Both of them are very important, because they are going to your logic will be defeated, because you come with a predefined mindset. If you sit there, it's almost like, at least with AI, and I can be very clear about it, it's predefined mindset. You're trying to fit a square in a circle, or a circle in a square, which will not happen for all possible scenarios. So you have to be open-minded, go with it, and that surely requires, and as your age grows, it becomes a bit difficult for you, but then you have to make it happen if it's a choice that which you're doing, that you should unlearn and be able to receive with an open mindset. And the best part, I should say, with the course is the course actually offered me, the first day when I went to the course, there were almost around 150 people around me with different backgrounds, coming from different industries, experiences, college outs, seniors, everyone out there. And that really helped, because there is a buzz of energy. Let me tell you, in these kind of new endeavors which you do, you need to have people together with you. That energy should be there. That's when it will push you through the initial hurdles that which are there. So it really helped. And then I think with my experience, I can dabble with programming. I can write a program, but I would prefer not to do it. If you give me a chance, I would ask someone else to write a program for me. I can give directions. That is where I would be. So it really helped me to engage with the junior most people to the senior most, talk about use cases. That's the best part, I should say, Jay. Nothing like it when you do a course and see where it can be applied, because it's like what my manager says, 1 + 1 can become 11. Only when, because you take other person's experience as your own experience. That's what happened for me in the course. And yeah, within those 6 months of the course, I can very clearly say that I became a different person, learned a lot. And so that's where I would say, for anyone who wants to get into these new endeavors, please dedicate time, take it with an open mind, and be participative. Don't be closed. Be more participative. Discuss. It's like no one can steal your knowledge. That can never happen. That's a wrong mindset thinking that which people would have. No one will steal ideas. No one can steal ideas, according to me. It's your own. So just discuss. Your ideas will get validated. You will learn more, and then yes, you will surely be able to achieve a lot more than what you're investing. That's what I would say.
No, no, perfect. I think those are extremely higher level of points in that they're very honest and also very sincere. The one point that I do want to spend a little more time is about learning and unlearning, like the way you mentioned. Not many people get it, but actually learning is an energy management business. I mean, look at that. It's about your own soul and mind and etc. So, for instance, I sort of had bad habits when I was learning. Like I would party on the and then go and get up and sort of attend the class, etc. So you're not really prepared. It should be exactly opposite, right? You must, like, from the fruit juices you have, like the input, like the diet you take in, etc. Your mind should be really sharp because these are very intense. At least I believe tech. I won't say, and probably even music, sports, all of these, you require a lot of energy because the fatigue point is so small. Like one code breaks or one like equation you don't understand, one concept you don't understand, the mind is just going drifted and you want to sleep and all those things which you have experienced. So really it's in the energy management business, and then accordingly you want to list your soul, your mind, your body, your environment. You can't really be on the phone and listening to lectures, etc. Those things don't work. Many people actually kind of make this recurring mistake as opposed to taking it like a ferocious proactive attitude, right? Yeah. Perfect. All right. Yeah, which brings to the next question. So you're talking about pre-course. I think you've just shared during course, post-course. I do want to talk about three broad themes. One is you've obviously had a good vantage point in seeing a lot of youngsters trying to apply for the firms. You've probably seen like a gazillion resumes, etc., in the AI space or other space. So definitely you have seasoned enough to tell what's going right and what's going wrong recurringly, right? Talk us about what resume or CV excites you and what is like oceans of mediocrity, islands of excellence, which I like to say. Like, but what is the denominator? What are you looking for in candidates so that some of them who are listening can reorient or reconfigure their trajectories to that?
Today, when I look into the resumes, for me, the first factor that which I really see is AI being relatively new, be it a fresher or a seasoned person. How much of, when you look into the projects that which they have done, let's say if a person has been, if I'm a mechanical engineer, let me put it this way, give you an example. And I then say I have done a project in something about, let's say on computer vision, but that's no way related to any one of the mechanical projects that which he has done or the domain that which he is working, then I would say I would not go for that resume, because this person is not able to apply what he's learning to his business, what he's not. So always one should, when you, this is my thinking, when you learn something new, you should be able to apply it to something that which you are experienced with, right? When I look into any senior resume, that's what I would really look for. When I look to any junior resources, let's say freshers out of the college, then I'm primarily looking into what are all the various mini and major projects which they have done. Did they do AI project only to be just as a project, final year project kind of a thing, or have they been dabbling with it? And before that, see, for all of us, we know that if you want to do an AI project, someone wants to put it, you Google out, you go to GitHub, you'll get one project you can download, bundle it. Even nowadays, you get a perfect project documentation out there, you can put it, right? So what is very important is if you want to do a project in Python, then have you done your Python fundamentals? Did you do a course in it? How much of, did you write any certifications? If you are a junior most, then these are some things that which I would surely look through in the resume. If I don't find it, then I'm not going to take that, because this person is just, maybe even if they have done, then they don't really have the fundamentals. They have not gone it in a prepared way. This is something that which I actually learned in my experience. Problem solving and being an engineer are two different things altogether. Anyone can solve a problem. You give me a problem, I can solve it. But an engineer is supposed to do it in a methodical way, which means that it will never break. Or when something breaks, you can go back and know where it has, what could be the cause of it. That is something which an engineer does in a very structured manner. So if someone is an engineer, then if you are saying that I have done an AI project, then there must be some structure in it. And if I don't find it, that's not a resume for me.
That's frankly a little. I mean, I won't say curt or ruthless, but it is what is it. You are building a great team. You're obviously a corporate company, so you can't like cut corners, etc. And the quality of talent is proportionate, obviously, to the next middle level manager, which is again proportionate to senior leadership. And you've been here for like two and a half decades, so that makes complete sense. Want to talk a little bit. I just want to spend a little more time on the leadership piece because it's a great opportunity to have you. I want to mine your head on that. I see a lot of leaders, Sharada, so I categorize them into three categories. Like if you look at a normal distribution, the early adopters, such as you, etc., the middle, which is a big, huge chunk, 69% of that is in the first standard deviation, who watch, okay, is she doing a course? Is he doing a course? Let me do that. And then obviously the laggards. Surprisingly, even the laggards number is not the normal distribution, it's humongous. So it seems like it's a left skewed distribution. What you've seen a lot of leaders, etc. What are the things they're doing right in terms of their upskilling, or like you said, learn, unlearn, and what are the things they're doing wrong? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think in the beginning, as you said, Jay, there is this particular notion that you just register for a course and then you sit in the class and then come out, don't spend any time on it, and you just can make it happen. No, that I think one of the major problems that which I see for the people who are in the leadership segment, right, who are trying to get into the course is basically not trying to understand what actually AI can do for their business in totality, right? It's just a jargon. It's still a hype for some of them. Okay. What I see some of the leaders, it's while I say about that negative part, let me really talk about the positive side of it. There are many leaders whom I have seen who have looked into or joined a course. It could be just a 2 or 3 day course, which are full time. To get that's what they have done. First, join to do a good overview about complete gamut of AI, right? Have a complete overview of what AI can give, and then pick and choose where they should venture and invest on. Because once you have a leadership hat, you're in there. It's all about where do you invest and what it will return back to you, right? And in there, when they think about that investment, they want to have a complete overview of the entire segment, and then they look into the specific pieces, specific parts. And these overview courses which they have done have been extremely good. And once they have the good overview, the best part that these people really have got is that they made it, they know when they recruit people, right? When they look and engage with customers and talk to them, you really have a very good idea about what that person is speaking, right? And what they want. You are able to address it in the right way. And this is something that which when they have done that, and that has actually helped me and even my organization and in my own friend circle, whoever have taken such kind of courses, to recruit the right set of people, to invest in the right set of projects. Because if you go and look into AI, customer X will say A, customer Y will say B, and someone else will say C. You can't do all three, and you can't get a benefit get cost benefit out there. So to do the cost benefit analysis and find out the right one, they actually have done doing a course and trying to find out from that perspective has really helped them in identifying the projects, in finding out the people whom they should recruit on, right? And then, how do you give your timeline? See, for the big part in AI, I should say, for the leaders, especially in one of the ICR meetings as well, I was talking about it. If you go with traditional project management, it doesn't work in AI projects. Because it is a continuous learning, and you cannot say that you will get 10% benefit overnight. The 10% benefit this month could become negative if your learning model doesn't perform on the new data well. We all understand that. So how do you quantify and present it to the customer and tell them that this is what will be your benefit? And how do you ensure that your project's costs do not overshoot is something that which in the leadership people have applied AI, and they focused on it. They have really focused on it, and it has helped them. That is what I have seen in my circle, let's say, on what people have done, the leaders, especially when they join and they do the course, the perspective they have looked to. Yeah? I don't know if it helped
No, no,
in any
perfect.
way, but that's something which I thought I should share.
No, no, 100%, because every sort of perspective is unique, right? So, and that's from your vast experience, etc. Can you talk a little bit about maybe one or two interesting projects where you have applied AI or you're thinking of applying, without too many specifics? I don't need, obviously, you can redact the project name title, but where you found it was very interesting, over the last couple of years.
Very interesting projects, a couple of them. One of them was actually more on uh, it was about how do you forecast. So let's say now we have a lot of retail chains, right? Take these coffee chain shops or any one of them, the retail outlets that which are there. You really have something which is very important to run these retails where they run is on margins. How much margin do you gain? And when your business keeps growing, uh, you really need to know whether you need to expand more or you have to start uh, curtailing and shrinking. Like for instance, when I looked to the other day in US, actually, when long back, now it's history with COVID, but otherwise when I went to US 3 years back, when you look to Starbucks, sometimes your Starbucks you find in every 3 miles apart, you find it across the streets. Sometimes they are quite far away. So how does the customer or the company make a decision where to start and how profitable is it going to be? And when you start, it might be profitable. Is it continuously being profitable to you or not? How do you decide? That is what we did actually with, not with Starbucks, I'm just giving you an example, but with one of the customers of ours, where you really give them those margin insights for the future. Like this is where your margins will be in the coming period, and these are the stores or these are the places where you think your predictability, according to your predictions, this might be falling down, so you better merge the stores or make different promotion plans and so on. Give them some insights about it, and frankly that has helped their business to grow during the COVID times as well. So that's been a good, nice success story, I should say, with AI. And another interesting use case that which we really did was on, nowadays we talk about a lot of IoT and machine learning coming together, right? And this is something that which was mainly on the clinical healthcare side, where imagine that you have a patient in ICU, and again during COVID times, think about someone who is there and you have a medicine that is put and there's a monitoring thing that which looks into for the meter readings and so on. Now based on the, let's say, the amount of medicine that which is used, right, and the pulse rates and whatever those medical measurements that which are happening, you'll be able to predict how much stock you need to keep, right? That stock could be as simple as your and your sanitary sanitizations and things like that. Because if, let's say, that patient your visit, the more the consumption is, it means that you have to change, which means that there will be a nurse who will be going there, and there will be a doctor who will be visiting. So once you visit, you will have to change. So there is an indirect relation out there, and the consumption of the medicine and the meter readings is somewhat impacting how your stock should be, which was a very, very interesting scenario for us to do. Because I usually thought, usually in an ERP background, where the company for which I'm working on, we come with its stock is purchase, sales, and inventory. This is what we see. But now here we are talking about an IoT data, which is healthcare meter readings, which is indirectly driving you how much stock you need to have, how many nurses you need to deploy. That's the kind of AI end-to-end solution that which we did, and it was really helpful during COVID times. I should tell you that it was a very nice thing that, okay, AI helps you in keeping things on track for customers, right? For patients, actually, for lives. So yeah, like there's lots of interesting case studies that which we have done, and yeah, so just a couple of interesting stories there.
Perfect. Awesome. Like, all the way from like obviously very nice retail use cases to, not for profit or charity use cases. That's fantastic. Just want to, which brings to the last question. Want to see, your thoughts, the way you look at the world in terms of AI, post-COVID world or whatever. What are the next 3 years? What are you excited about? Which technologies, top two, or how do you see any two insights, shaping the world?
One thing is very clear: AI is going to become a commodity. That's there, because at the moment now you see between when I did the course to now, auto ML, easy ML, that has become the thing. Wherein you give a data and there are tools that which will tell you, if you do a classification, it will give you a model. And so I would say that firstly with AI, it doesn't mean that AI is dead. No, it wouldn't. AI is there to live forever. But for the people who want to choose, I would say that AI has to be embedded together with your domain expertise. Wherever you are, whichever domain you are, you need to be able to get that, mingle it with your domain expertise, and then yes, AI is there. Um, where is the world going to? One of the many things that which we are in the AI world itself. It's not like outside the AI world. The new thing that which we are really looking into is the behavioral science part with AI. Because imagine now, almost for the past 1.5 years, we have been all in the work from home circle, right? And you need to be able to know the current psychology, the current state of a person. When because let's say if you are in office, you are mingling with people, you get to know and find out if someone is good, happy, sad, what is happening with them. But now there is no way in which you can really see it. So looking into the way in which they look through in this websites, or what is it that they are doing, the using AI for the behavioral science, I think that's something which is there, which is going to be heavy, right? And on the emotional intelligence side, that is something that which is going to be there purely on the AI side. On the technology front, uh, Docker has made life. It really disrupted the server world and has made things completely different. So I don't know what next is there after Docker, but I think right now microservices and Docker are there. And how do you efficiently manage your Docker containers? The Docker management, DMA, that which we call, is going to be there, and I think that will evolve into something new for sure. But that's something which is there. And data, how do you handle big data? The data is growing like anything. And yeah, we started with DBs, and now later we had NoSQL DBs, and now we have file servers become DBs and so on. I don't know where the world is, but I think the data storage is another place, and data management is another big domain that which will be there, which will be evolving in the coming 3 years. And be it research or be it know-how in that area, I would say you are the most relevant person for the world now.
No, perfect. I think that's actually you've sort of covered the whole diaspora of technologies that are going on, all the way from like generalized AI to like Docker containers, more on, like you said, the development deployment piece. So I think even there's like tremendous amounts of innovation going on. Perfect. Thank you. I mean, this brings us to the end of the session. Thank you so much, and it was actually lovely to talk to you, listen to you. You always like I love your smile and the kind of childlike enthusiasm you bring, but also you are like completely seasoned and you're willing to learn and unlearn. That's phenomenal. Thank you so much for coming. And folks, feel free, I guess, to connect to Sharada on LinkedIn or wherever you find her. She's from Inford, and if you've liked this, please type the top 3 comments. Wherever you're watching this, algorithms work in a way where if there's more activity, it's more traction, and it's shown to a lot more people, and they can benefit. They can listen to her story and get really inspired. Once again, thank you so much for coming on this. I know it's again a busy day for you, so really, really lovely having you here.
Thank you, Jay, for this opportunity. Yeah, all the best.
Thank you.